All right, so we got some pretty major updates here on Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan that has been completely eviscerated and gutted by corporate Democrats with basically no pushback whatsoever from Joe Biden himself or the rest of the Democratic establishment, and really very little pushback from progressives even, who are seeming, at least according to the reporting that we're about to get into, are seeming like they are ready to fall in line with this completely pathetic, hollowed out bill. So I want to read you some of the details, but first understand there are a lot of moving parts in these negotiations, and we don't have a exact picture of what this bill is going to actually look like in terms of its legislative text, but we have the broad outlines, and it is absolutely ridiculously pathetic. But here from Joe Biden this morning. So Biden announces a deal and seeks votes saying, let's get this done. So he says, President Joe Biden declared Thursday that he has reached a historic economic framework with Democrats in Congress on his sweeping domestic policy package, a hard-fought yet dramatically scaled-back deal announced just before he departs for overseas summits. And Biden's remarks at the White House came after he traveled to Capitol Hill to make the case to House Democrats for the still robust Democratic package or domestic package. I love how they include that editorial editing there of just still robust. Okay, according to who? But they move on here saying that the $1.75 trillion of social services and climate change programs in the White House, or the White House believes can pass the 50-50 Senate. And they say here are basically the policies that are going to be in and out of the package. So paid family leave and efforts to lower prescription drug pricing are now gone entirely from the package, drawing outrage from some lawmakers and advocacy groups. Okay, first off, paid family leave, just to give you a perspective on how pathetic this is on the global stage. So they were negotiating between 12 weeks of guaranteed paid family leave and 4 weeks of paid family leave. Now they're saying 0 weeks of paid family leave. This is what the entire rest of the world is doing, okay? Paid leave for new mothers. The U.S. is one of 7 countries without national paid maternity leave, okay? Look at this map. We are literally the only developed country in the entire world that does not have guaranteed paid leave for new mothers, and really it should be for fathers as well. But you see here, we have 0 weeks in this country. Many other countries, especially in Europe, you see here, they have over 24 weeks. And in fact, they say the average here is 29 weeks. So the average globally for this specific program that is overwhelmingly supported by the American people, 29 weeks is the average. We were negotiating crumbs. We were negotiating from 12 to 4 weeks, and now we're down to 0 weeks. Why? Because we got a couple corrupt motherfuckers in the Senate that apparently get to determine the entire agenda on behalf of their corporate donors and against the wishes of the American people. Now, again, on the lower prescription drug pricing, just to give you another perspective in terms of how pathetic this actually is, from KFF Health Tracking Poll, May of 2021, prescription drug prices are the top public's healthcare priorities. Okay, so this is not only the top public's healthcare priorities, this is the #1 issue that Americans are citing as the most important part of this bill, was drug pricing reforms. And not only that, but look at how many people support this. Overall, nearly 9 in 10, 88% favor allowing the federal government to negotiate for lower prices on medications, including 3/4 of Republicans. 77% of Republicans supported this bill, and yet the so-called moderate Kyrsten Sinema apparently gets to take a bunch of bribes, to hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes from Big Pharma, to then go and block this legislation that, again, 77% of Republicans want. There is nothing, there is no policy that you could say has this much overwhelming support among the American people, and yet that is completely gone from this bill. So it's just ridiculously pathetic. And again, you guys know the statistics. Americans are paying far more for prescription drugs than any other developed country in the world. In fact, a lot of these big pharma companies are literally making more from the United States than they are from every other country that they deal with combined, because of how ridiculous our lack of negotiating is. But they continue here with more disappointment. So still in the mix, a long list of other priorities. Free kindergarten, okay, free pre-kindergarten, that's pretty good for all youngsters. Expanded healthcare programs, barely, including the launch of a $35 billion new hearing aid benefit. So not universal, just a $35 billion new hearing aid benefit for people with Medicare, and $555 billion to tackle climate change. That may sound like a lot. That's $500 billion, but again, you need to be reminded that is over 10 years. That is $555 billion for the single greatest threat facing humanity right now in climate change. $555 billion over 10 years. That's $55 billion or so per year. That is like not even 1/10 of what we are spending on the Pentagon budget. So Joe Biden, who is supposedly this big believer in climate change, and he's going to be the guy who takes it seriously and addresses it and leads the world into the future of renewable energy, this guy is only spending less than 1/10 of on climate change as he is on the military. Okay, so just gives you a perspective in terms of what his actual priorities are. Clearly, they are not on tackling climate change. And again, this might be our last chance to seriously address climate change. Just completely tossing most of the most important provisions of that initial climate change proposal out the window. And they continue saying that there's also a 1-year extension of a child care tax credit that was put in place during the COVID-19 rescue and new child care subsidies. And again, the child care tax credit, Democrats themselves claimed that this cut child poverty in half during the pandemic. So you are going to take a policy that was overwhelmingly popular among the American people, apparently cut child poverty in half, and now you're saying we want to, instead of extending that permanently and making it a permanent program so we can address child poverty, instead they're saying we're going to back off from that and make it a 1-year extension. Okay, so apparently 2 years from now, Democrats are perfectly fine with all of these children falling back into poverty. Okay, that's the message that they're sending. But they continue here saying that an additional $100 billion to bolster immigration and border processing system could boost the overall package to $1.85 trillion if it clears Senate rules. So understand, this bill as it stands is not worth passing. 100% not worth passing. If I was a member of the squad, if I was Bernie Sanders, I am vehemently opposing this and demanding better concessions. This is pathetic. This is completely watered down, completely gutted. Basically, none of the most popular and important provisions that were in this bill are in there still, okay? It's been completely gutted. So, of course, now we have Kyrsten Sinema saying, oh, well, now I'm kind of in favor of this. So here's what Kyrsten Sinema had to say. So they say, at least one pivotal holdout, Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona, struck a similar tone, quote, I look forward to getting this done. However, another holdout, Senator Joe Manchin, was less committal, saying this is all in the hands of the White House right now. So even Joe Manchin won't agree to this completely watered down and eviscerated handout to him specifically. He still will not make a firm commitment on that. It's just completely pathetic and ridiculous. But they continue here giving a little bit more detail. So in his meeting with lawmakers on the Capitol, Biden said he wanted progress in hand when he arrives in Rome for the upcoming global summit to show world leaders, including those in Russia and China, that democracies still work. According to those attending the private meeting. And he says, quote, we are at an inflection point, Biden said. The rest of the world wonders whether we can function. Clearly, we can't. But he continues saying that, and he said it's not hyperbole to say that the House and Senate majorities and my presidency will be determined by what happens in the next week. So if that is true, and this is what's going to determine your legacy is pathetic. Your legacy is completely bailing on everything that you promised the American people just to appease a handful of extremely corrupt corporate Democrats within your own party without even attempting to put pressure on them. Biden is the one who keeps comparing himself to LBJ and FDR. Guess what? They played hardball. They weren't just going and like rubbing shoulders with corporations and asking them what they want and then folding immediately. They were putting pressure on them. They were willing to take that fight directly to the corrupt members within their own party or even without externally to their own party. They were willing to go to the mat and fight for those big, bold policies. You are not, and we are seeing the results. So this is apparently going to be Joe Biden's legacy. But again, I think it's comical that he says, this is how we're going to prove that democracies still work. This is a perfect example of how the United States is not a democracy. Our entire government has been bought and captured and controlled. Our legislative agenda is 100% determined by corporate America. That's what this entire situation is showing. And Joe Biden is using this to say, oh, well, this proves that we are still a functioning democracy. No, the fuck we're not, Joe Biden. If we are a functioning democracy, you wouldn't be giving up on all of this legislation that the American people want you to pass overwhelmingly. That's not how democracy works, okay? Believe it or not. But that's where Joe Biden's at right now. So it's a completely pathetic and ridiculous situation. Again, just a reminder, this is where we're at so far. So from Meghan Day, just to recap, I think so far we've said goodbye to paid family leave, tuition-free community college, meaningful climate provisions, expanded Medicare eligibility, vision, hearing, and dental, prescription drug price controls, universal non-mean-tested childcare, plus a tax credit, and a billionaire tax. What is left in this bill? What is left in this bill that is actually worth passing? And so now we get to the point of progressives. Are they going to stay firm to their commitment of no climate, no deal? Are they going to actually ask for material concessions? Well, we've been getting a little bit of conflicting messaging here. So from Rashida Tlaib yesterday, she said, I am not going to sell out my district for a bill that was written by the fossil fuel industry and championed by 2 Dem senators who bowed down to big pharma and corporate polluters. So that seemed like it was a good indication that they were ready to hold the line. But today we got this update. So Representative Mondaire Jones says that there was unanimous endorsement of Biden's reconciliation framework in the Progressive Caucus meeting. And Jayapal apparently said this as well. Unanimous endorsement of this pathetic outline that we just went through. Okay, unanimous endorsement. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, and listen, this is an Axios reporter, so I'm inclined to believe that this inside scoop is apparently accurate. And if it is accurate, this is completely pathetic. This is progressives proving once again that their leverage means nothing, that they are not willing to actually hold the line when it comes down to moments like this, that they are perfectly willing to sell out the American people without even putting up a fight. Where was Bernie Sanders? Where was the rest of the squad in West Virginia, in Arizona, trying to actually put pressure? Have they even been coming out and calling them corrupt directly this entire time? There are so many different things that they could have been doing, holding that line in the sand and maintaining their positions, and they have not done, it seems like, virtually any of that, okay? Minimal effort being put in here, and apparently unanimous endorsement of this pathetic, watered down, completely hollowed out bill. So if this is where we're at right now, it's pathetic, and honestly, this is making me lose a lot of faith in some of these members of Congress. Typically, I feel like I give them a lot of the benefit of the doubt, and I'm pretty generous in my commentary towards them, but if this bill gets passed as it stands, that is an absolutely massively fat L that they are allowing these corporate Democrats, these entirely corrupted entities, to force on the American people.